If you could sum up the music community in Ontario, the energy, the emotion, the sense of family, in one word, what would that word be?
It's vital, because it is definitely what drove me to be a musician, and it drives others to be a musician, and it is the reason why me and my bandmates try so hard to do what we do. So, vital.
What's up, everyone? We're Castlefield from right here in Ottawa. Thanks for being here. Yay! Yay!
Bands from here, they're going to work a lot harder than most American bands because they have something to prove. It's taken them a few extra steps and a few extra dollars to make a tour in the US possible, so they're going to look to make the most out of it.
Ontario is the coolest place on the planet, and everybody knows that there's tons of artists that deserve to be here rather than myself as a new artist. And the fact that I am is largely because of the fact that people believe in me and they believe what I'm trying to say, and they give me the chance to speak to you today on this platform. So, to Heavy Hearts, to Goldfish, to Passion Entertainment, I can't thank you guys enough, and I love you all very much. Thank you so much.
Canada, you don't really get as many bands that like sound like other things. They sound like themselves, and then people try to pigeonhole them. And like, I think we've always been onto something. It's just a matter of people around the world paying attention.
You know, you look at some big labels that are really in the forefront in the music industry right now, and it's like we're kicking ass. Like we're doing really, really, really well.
New Damage is obviously a solid record label, and then Dine Alone Records, obviously, too, have been a complete staple in Southern Ontario. Like they are responsible for Alexis on Fire in Canada, like their entire career. I know that they manage the band as well.
Labels like Dine Alone, particularly in Toronto, who are doing really cool stuff. And like when you look at their label rosters, like artist rosters, it's pretty eclectic, you know? And that's really the key to all this stuff is no matter how you want to paint it, in one way you can say that all these bands reside under the same musical umbrella, but when you really get up close, like there are all these differences between them, but you know, it adds up to this really great state of music right now, you know?
You just have such a big community of people always, you know, thriving off of each other, and like the resources available here, they're like endless.
I think Toronto has this like incredibly thriving, creative music community. I think it always has. I think right now the rest of the world is noticing because of Drake and The Weeknd and those dudes like blowing up in such a huge way. But like Toronto has been consistently putting out like so much interesting music forever.
When I was first starting out in Toronto, that was in 1999, 2000, it was definitely a real community. And, you know, I came up with Broken and Feist and Alexis on Fire and those type of bands, so there was a sense of community there. I still believe that that is still part of what Toronto is.
The whole reason that I actually moved to Toronto other than school was because I wanted to be in a city where there was a lot of music.
Toronto scene, in my opinion, is the best and healthiest it's been in a really long time. There's constant shows happening in all genres across the board, and somewhere it's, I don't think, ever really been before. So I'm really excited for it.
Obviously, there's just so much more of a surplus in Toronto, which is good because I feel like a lot of people come because there's almost like there's something for everyone.
Lots of markets in Canada, or I guess in specifically Southern Ontario, are thriving a lot.
We brought back Koi Music Festival this year. We had 22 bands over 2 stages at Maxwell's Concerts and Events, with bands like Kingdoms coming back, Three Crowns coming back, and then big headliners like Comeback Kid, Silverstein, and Cancer Bats. That was an awesome time, and we're definitely looking forward to next year and starting to plan that.
Like, Koi is like the reason why I ever wanted to be in a local band. Koi actually like opened my eyes to our local like Ontario scene. I remember I went to my first one like 5 years ago, and I saw a band called Storyteller and found out they were from Kitchener. And I was like, okay, now I want to start my own bands. Koi was always kind of like an achievement, like to get there, so playing it this year was super cool.
I don't know, I guess it was kind of like every band kind of dreams to play Warped Tour. I kind of dreamed to play like Scene Fest and Koi Fest and stuff like that when I was growing up.
The Ontario music scene is fantastic. One thing that it doesn't get credit for is its little subsidies of towns and scenes within itself. It's not like a lot of places across the US and Canada where it's just one city or two cities. And since the time I've been here, there's bands everywhere, there is music to be seen everywhere, and I think it's a really cool developing scene.
Like when people think of Ontario, they just think like Toronto and even Ottawa, but like London, Waterloo, like there's a lot of cool scenes like buried under there. St. Catharines is a really good one. I really like that city. And we've met like amazing people in each city that really care about music, so I think that's like something really cool about the Ontario music scene.
Lots of people in every single scene that are helping keep this scene alive. You know, you have the Kyle Wapplers, and you have the Rick Halls, and you have the Travis Porters and everything, the Brandon Eddies. You have all those people that are keeping the scene in Ontario alive really well.
I think that's, for me, one of the things I always try to point out to people that kind of harp on this idea that the music scene was always at its peak in the, 10 to 15 years ago, is that if you really look and pay attention to what's going on now, you'll realize that it's a lot better.
I hope that we can get to a point, like, just like super broad strokes, where like you don't need the next thing, you just need to appreciate what you have now. And that goes for so many things outside of music or anything, just like as a people.
It's like better than it's ever been, because like so many bands have like come up and like gotten signed and stuff like that, and then there's a lot of other bands like working towards that, but there's such like a community in it. Like all the bands are very like connected. We all kind of like, everyone plays shows with everyone, and it's always so much fun, and like everyone's so awesome. There's so many good bands too.
So around Toronto, and this is in the world that I used to tour in, which is like the pop punk emo scene, we've got bands like Pacific, Seaway, Cold Front, Rarity, like all these bands that are touring on a larger scale, that have broken out of Ontario, Quebec kind of touring circuit. We've got bands like Counterparts, No Warning is back, putting out awesome hardcore music. You put up the best of Toronto up against the best of what's coming out anywhere else in their respective genre, I think it's doing just fine.
I know growing up there was bands that I liked, and there was shows to go to, but I don't think it's ever been the way it is now, with the way bands are getting signed, and just how much it's grown and what it's grown into is something that I just think is extremely special.
Like you look across Canada, like there's a lot of bands popping up everywhere, not just in Ontario, which is I think is a kind of a new thing. Like you've got Sleep Shaker on the East Coast, and like a ton of cool bands that I've heard about recently out in Alberta. Whenever we go out west as well, it's awesome. Like the kids always tell us like bands never come here, and when we do roll out, like the kids come. They want the shows, they just aren't existing yet. So I'm hoping that with companies like Exclaim and like other things that can help bands have a platform to get to where they want to be, and like start playing shows.
Sometimes I find myself in a crowded room with good friends, and I feel this will end too soon. Some things just end too soon. I watch you fall asleep and never wake up. Don't take these memories of the people I love, 'cause my God, we might not have much longer. We might not have much longer.
Like, why do I go to shows? At this point, I can't imagine not. At first I started going back in the day because I was drawn to pop punk. It was just the energy of it, right? And there's no replicating that live energy and experience.
I used to go to punk shows in Richmond Hill by myself all the time at Johnny's Billiards, and like That's because I didn't have other friends at my high school that listened to the same music as I did, or getting excited to be with actual like-minded people, be with friends that honestly think, act, and feel the same things that I do, and I didn't feel so damn alone.
Went to shows, it was just the energy of it, right? When you go to like a really like packed show and there's like a lot of kids like diving all over each other, just having a good time. That was like what initially attracted me, but like I got so into the musicianship and just like watching like when you can tell a band is just like a really like a tight live band. It's like watching that is like what I love, really. That's what brings me to the shows.
I think for me it was feeling like I belonged somewhere. I think that was a big part of it for me. I felt, like in high school, things like that, I felt out of place a lot of the time, and then I found a group of people, that I connected with, and then I would go to shows, and there was all these other people that I could connect with, and I felt like everyone was my family, and then, everybody enjoyed the same music and the same environment, and you could just look at somebody and be like, I get you, you know what I mean? And then the music was just amazing on top of that. It was community.
Not only is it loud, is it visually more stimulating than just listening or watching this little screen at my house, but I'm in a community of people that are like me. And I think a lot of people that are music fans, especially underground music fans, find themselves feeling alone. And a lot of times the music is geared towards that. And all of a sudden there's this sense of community, like, oh my God, I know these people I see every time I go to a show, and I know their names. And it was just an amazing thing that I think the beauty of that is that's never going to go away.
Man, I started going to shows years ago with Brendan, and I met Bukta through going to shows. Mikey through going to shows. I met Jeremy through shows. I met Jody through shows. We were all from the same town, and we all seriously clicked because of music. And that was the first time. I never, Jeremy and I went to the same high school. I went to the same high school as both Jordy and Brendan, and we never saw each other until music got thrown into the mix. So yeah, if it wasn't for that and going to shows, man, you want a sense of purpose and stuff like that? It's pretty nice, right?
It's exciting being in a crowd when everyone else is as hyped as you are, that you're seeing this band that you absolutely love. That's what's different about watching it on YouTube or any of the videos is you experience that crowd. You experience the energy of the crowd. The band itself living off that energy of the crowd, and they're getting as hyped as you are.
There's still a lot of excitement about going to shows, and I think that's never really going to get lost. Just wear earplugs, please wear earplugs. Earplugs are so important. I understand now.
Going there, I just felt like I belonged somewhere, like Jeremy was saying. It was just a sense of home and community. It was gonna happen. If it wasn't for music, I don't know what I would be doing today. I might have a family and a real job, but I don't really want that right now, so.
When I was about 15, I didn't know any of the bands, and I went in and it was a DIY show, and there was just kids crowd surfing, beating the crap out of each other, having the best time, and it's just something that just resonated with me really well. I think it's just seeing the emotion and the truth in the music. I think for a lot of people, I think that's what it really comes down to, is the connection that you have with the music and the relevance it has to your own life. For me, I think that's why it's always important to support music at grassroots, because I think a lot of us nowadays have seen so many bands that are now huge that we saw in 100 cap rooms once upon a time, and they don't get there without the support of people coming to shows.
There has been a lot of music venues closing down, especially within this year. It is a problem.
Toronto and its prices increasing for not just venues but for any storefronts, for any real estate is insane. So it's making it almost impossible to keep your doors open.
It just kind of happens. I mean, it's weird because I don't think it's so much kids not going to shows. I think it's more of the economy of the city as a whole, where it's rent is expensive and property is expensive and people are buying it up, and it's one of those things where it's eventually rent in places on Bloor Street where a place like D Bistros is expensive, and they'd have to put on more shows and have to charge a higher ticket price to really make it work.
It's very easy to look at venues closing down and see it as a negative and blame the venues or whatever, but I think it really comes down to is making venues worth staying open. I think a lot of people don't realize that as a fan of music and a fan of touring artists, it's as much your responsibility to keep the venues open as it is anyone else. The venue is just there to provide, you know, a space for the bands to play. It's one thing to like a band, it's another thing to go out of your way and pay $5-10 to see a show. I think that's what really keeps venues alive, and I think if we can all keep that attitude of paying respect to music in that format, then venues won't close down at the same rate that they currently are. There will always be a place for live music, there will always be a place for bands to play, but variety, and if you look at some of the best markets across the world, it's having the variety and the growth in venues and the support from the local scene.
I think people are always going to find a way. Plus, that kind of thing just brings out the punk side of everything. People are just going to start playing in the alleys.
I think, you know, you have all these closures of stuff and you see all these changes in music. That opens up a lane creatively for people that want to do something different. So once again, it can be something that's difficult, but I think creative people are going to find a way around that and do something really special. And it allows that to flourish.
Played a basement show like 2 blocks away from here with the hotelier at a place called Dude Manor. And James and I, my roommate, played that and we're like, man, we should do this. Like, this would be a lot of fun. We decided to move in together. We found this place and we walked downstairs and said to our landlord, we're like, we're gonna build a stage in here and throw house shows. And he's like, oh, okay. And he comes back a week later and he's like, oh shit, you weren't fucking around. And it's been going ever since for like 3 years now. Like 150 shows. It's a lot. So I think people need to start like going out and experiencing it more. But I think there's a lot of bands that are doing good things, working hard, doing what they have to do to get out there and make it work.
Last year was weird. It was a really weird year where a lot of shows were drier than we thought it was going to be, and ticket sales were a little lighter. But so far, everything that's been happening in this year has been moving really well. I mean, I have Protest the Hero that's about to do 3 shows at the Danforth Music Hall. And originally when we booked the tour, we thought, you know, one night was going to be it. And we were just like, one night will probably sell out, closer to the date, that'll be it. But we're 4 months out from that show, and we've already sold out 2. So it's good, and it's crazy. It's like, if you actually sit back and you look at other shows that are moving right now, it's like all kinds of, you know, shows are selling out well in advance. It's cool, and I think we're starting to see that support coming in from fans again.
Toronto's booming. Toronto's booming for music. I don't think there's a better scene in Ontario right now than Toronto, for sure, because like Toronto is just like the mecca of music, like hip hop, R&B, rock, metal, like punk. It doesn't matter. Like, everybody comes here to make music. So it's like, yeah, no, I don't think Toronto's going anywhere, like, ever. In terms of music, that's for sure.
Everything about the music industry has completely changed, like, you know, because of the way everything online and everyone interacts.
I think now it's a very important tool, and I think it's the greatest thing the band can have. It's actually crazy trying to like translate the analytics of streaming and everything else digital to like what would happen live. And it's cool because a lot of touring now that I have with some of my artists, we plan a lot of our touring around what our digital numbers are showing us. So, you know, if the band's going on tour in the US and it says like New York, we have high numbers there, and Philadelphia, we have high numbers there, but then say like, you know, Houston, Texas, we have terrible numbers there. We're going to completely avoid that city altogether and just not waste our time or waste money doing it.
I grew up in like the CD era. So when I got my first iPod, I was excited. I was like ripping CDs and buying them still and everything. And I just remember the day when I was so determined to keep buying CDs, because it was like, I used the like, it's a tangible thing, it's this physical thing excuse. Innovation is always tough to accept, and technology will constantly get better. Things will constantly change. The sooner you embrace it, the sooner something exciting can happen.
it's just crazy that it took so long, but I feel like it's the evolution process of music. Songs are all digital. If you record in a studio, chances are it's going to be recorded digitally. It's not recorded completely.
The digital realm was a fantastic outlet. It broadcasts a whole bunch of artists that no one would actually hear about.
Have pretty much like jumped on the streaming bandwagon. I used to be like the CD hoarder queen, and now I just realized how much nicer it is to not have clutter. But in terms of the work, like for me, I'm posting streams all day, every day. So it's like I wouldn't have a job if we weren't online and posting digital music. So it's like every time someone releases a new single or a new video, that's what I'm posting and writing about as soon as it's happening.
I don't have any like streaming apps or anything, but I definitely have a big vinyl collection. Music is art, so like I feel like it's important to have like that piece of art to go with it. Like you have a physical piece, and when you have like MP3s, I kind of think that gets taken away.
In a lot of ways, there's benefits to the way music is being consumed these days. Of course, everyone has a soft spot for the old days, but I'm glad vinyl's still here, and that's not going anywhere.
Well, the rest of the guys know that I'm against technology. I'm not like the biggest fan of it. Like I hate using a computer. But with that being said, I feel like with anything, it's good to have like a good balance between the two. Like I feel like the two worlds of like technology and non-technology can coexist perfectly fine.
I guess we're kind of getting that with the whole streaming services now. It's like I don't know the last time I've actually like bought and downloaded a song, unless it was like a local band with like Bandcamp. But I pretty much use Spotify for everything, and I'm sure once that's gone, I'll be like, oh, I miss having all my music on Spotify.
I'm sure a lot of other bands like us, like, you know, the majority of where we make all our money is on the road and merch and stuff like that. And like digital is like such a great way for small bands to get their message across and their music across to people who would otherwise never ever knew who they were. And yeah, I think digital age is cool. I'm all for technology and music working together.
It's definitely done a really great job of connecting this digital thing that we can get right away to a tangible spot that we can still have at the end of the day.
Until that's downloadable, we're always going to need to have that environment. And that is the most amazing thing about music, is just that the live venue is so important. The live aspect is everything.